What's up, guys? Once again, welcome back, guys, to another episode of QuattroQuattroDos. On this episode, I was fortunate enough to talk to a assistant coach to a high school here outside of Houston, on the west side of Houston, Brookshire Royals. I was able to talk to Bruno Baltazar, who's one of the assistant coaches over there. And I just want to let you guys know that we had a great conversation, we talked a lot about, what it is to be a coach, his career, coming from Portugal all the way to Houston, and how he ended up, being a coach, and what the future looks like for him and everything in between. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that the conversation does cut out at the end, but it was literally at the final, where I was about to actually close the episode for the episode period. So if you see that sudden change or sudden cut off, don't be too alarmed. It was actually the end of the conversation. But once again, I want to thank Bruno for taking the time to be able to come on the show and sharing his story, sharing everything that he has learned and everything that he's going to, be doing in the future. So hopefully, you guys enjoyed this great episode, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of QuattroQuattroDos. Yeah, have a good one. All right. So, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of QuattroQuattroDos. Obviously, it's been a little while since we had shows, and we actually had guests on the show. But today, we were able to find somebody that actually works with in the local community here around. Well, kind of outside of Houston, but Houston adjacent. And he's actually a coach, a high school coach, an assistant coach here on the area. And we wanted to talk to him and kind of see what that lifestyle is like. Obviously, being a coach can be difficult at times, because you have to deal with personalities of your players, but not only your players, but he's a high school coach, so obviously you have young guys you have to mentor and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to I thought it would be interesting to talk to people like that and see what their mindset is, and just kind of learn their stories. And today I have Bruno. So how you doing, Bruno? How are you, man?
I'm good, and you?
Good, man. Boca just won a couple Libertadores, so we're feeling good.
Not
uh
bad, not bad.
yeah,
Sporting will finish second in the Portuguese league, so I don't know about that.
closing up. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with that. You're Portuguese, right? So
Mhm.
can you tell me, how is it growing up in Portugal? I don't think I've ever met a Portuguese person.
It's relaxed. I lived in the outskirts of Lisbon, which is the capital.
Uh-huh.
As a little kid, you play in the street. You oftentimes you get a soda can, you flatten it with your feet, and then you play with it. If you ever play with a soda can, if there's one thing you learn with it, is that if you can play with a soda can, you definitely can play with a soccer ball.
Exactly.
So it will acquire you some technical skills, and you definitely pick up a lot of fights as well, because it gets intense out there. Especially because some people just put their feet on top of the soda can and they don't want to let it go. But it's culturally is not very different as one can really think about America. The food is not it's not very different. Maybe less burgers and more like slow cooking. But it's not very different. Now in terms of soccer, definitely a religion down there, as big as a religion it is. Much more. I mean, you can relate it Argentinian. It's definitely gets wild out there. So that's one thing that is a little bit different. America is definitely growing. The soccer over here is definitely growing, and
Yeah.
it's exponentially. It used to be every 4 years when the World Cup was around, everyone would pretend to pick a team and to be an expert. But the game is getting much better. I mean, obviously on the women's side, it's always been very good, but on the boys' side, it's we've even on the high school. You're talking about high school. Back then, with the problem with high school, and still is in a lot of high schools, is that a lot of coaches are just football coaches. They're pretending to be soccer coaches, and
Mm.
that hurts the game. That hurts the little kids, because these coaches really they don't know what they're doing, and it's not really their fault.
Yeah.
Oftentimes schools don't got the money to just pay stipends just specifically to people that really are knowledgeable of soccer. But it hurts the kids because it stops their development. Not every kid can afford club soccer.
Yeah.
Club soccer can be very expensive, and
Yes.
some kids don't have even the transportation to go to club soccer and practice every day. So it's via high school, public high school, at least they have to be there every day.
Yeah.
So it allows them for free as well to be able to, if of course they got the skills, but it allows
Yeah.
them to develop their game. So it's good seeing nowadays more and more coaches that actually know what they're talking about, more specific soccer coaches, and you're starting to slowly see that the level of competition is starting to increase. A lot of coaches now not just focus about soccer, but they focus about the physical aspect of the player, such as making them lift weights and things of that nature. And you're starting to see the competition starting to be a lot better. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. A few years back, if you were going to see a high school game, you probably hurt your eyes a little bit. The quality wasn't very good. But it's slowly, you can go to a 4A school competition, which is less population, and you
Mhm.
can get very good games out of there. So it's starting to really grow. Kids are starting to have a passion, coaches are starting to have a passion, and schools starting to see the worth in it. At least administration is seeing the
Yeah.
worth in it.
So before we because I have questions about the whole, high school situation, high school soccer. But
Mhm,
before we dive into that, because like I said, I have multiple questions.
mhm.
Tell me how, how a guy from from Portugal, from Lisbon, makes it all the way to Texas. How was that ride? How was that journey?
Uh, through depression, if I'm honest with you. So I was with the youth levels of Sporting Lisbon, which, if
Mhm.
people know about Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, that's the team that he started as well. And I was there. I mean, he's obviously a little bit older than me. I played against him. We used to scrimmage oftentimes the older levels. And so I was, left back. I was pretty good, as not so much technicality, but more IQ of the game, which allowed me to be good as smart defender.
Mhm.
Which of course years later it makes sense as a coach if you have a good IQ of the game.
Yeah.
But I was really good. I got back-to-back ACLs, which led me to being 17 years old. I already had an offer from Estrela, which was a team back then. It was in the first division. They're no longer in the first division, to be a pro and everything. But I was still a minor. The doctor told, hey, if he has another ACL, to my mother, he's like, he's really going to struggle to walk. And that really scared my mother. She didn't she signed off on the rehab to be able to walk, but not to be playing competitively again, which I got cut from the team. And I got bitter at the game itself. I'm like, nah, I really, because when you spend so many years as a little kid, especially,
Yeah.
and then as a teenager, and you really have an idea that you're going to be someone, and then those dreams are crushed, you are lost. And that led me to, I struggled, but eventually I graduated with my diploma. I started messing around with basketball. I became a basketball scout. I work for a team down there, and they asked me, hey, if we pay you a little bit, can you go actually to America and pick up some guys that cannot make it to the NBA, but
Interesting.
watch them, write about them, scout them, and then convince them to come back to Europe to play pro basketball. So that's what I did for 2 years, and that's the reason that led me to this country in the first place. After that, the team folded. They went bankrupt. I was just 20 years old.
Wow, you were young.
So yeah, I was too young, I would say.
Yeah.
There are my chances of continuing to do that professionally. I
Yeah.
was younger than the players, and that was a problem to most teams.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm already in America. Might as well see if I can have success over here in this country.
Yeah.
But that changed me to more the regular field. Up till a few years back, I decided, you know what, I can get a degree. My original thought is I'm going to get a college degree. I can be on the criminal justice side of things, so maybe I can help people that were immigrants as well,
Mhm.
especially try to put them their paperwork and things of that nature. That
Yeah.
didn't work out as well because I failed the vision test with the Department of Homeland Security. So once again, I had to redesign my goals, and that led me to, okay, I love soccer. I can actually be a coach if I can teach in high school. And
Yeah.
that's how I became a teacher, and now fast forward, a coach as well.
Coach.
So that's
What do you teach?
I'm under the social studies, but I teach psychology and sociology.
Oh, that's
So
tight.
trying to find the reason why I continue to be depressed, but yet still have a smile on my face.
Hey, that's me right there, bro. I mean, I'm the same way every day of my life. I'm like, but yeah, you got to keep going, find a reason, and keep pushing forward. So
But
at least we try,
soccer is a hobby. Soccer is
Exactly.
a hobby.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes you not think about stuff that sometimes is not very pleasant to think about. I
yeah.
think
That's
that's
true.
what connects a lot of us with the same passion. You know,
Yeah,
we can talk about soccer, and it makes you not think about anything else. You know, and that's why this is a passion. This is why
for
it's,
sure.
and that's why a lot of people, though, passion can be good, but sometimes it can also
Yeah.
be very bad.
Exactly. So tell me about your coaching, your coaching career. How did that start? When you decided. How old were you when you were like, okay, I'm gonna become a teacher and I'm gonna become a coach?
A
How old?
teacher 3 years ago, a coach 3 years ago, when I started being a coach
Uh-huh.
last year.
Okay.
And But I said it, if I was going to do it, it had to be the right thing. I could have become a coach years ago,
Mhm.
but it had to be the right project and surrounded by the right people. Because again, soccer was something that I think hurt me too much. So I didn't want it to go back to soccer and then feel like I would get hurt again out of the
Yeah,
game. And I definitely didn't want it to surround myself with football knowledge and not soccer knowledge, if that makes sense. And I'm only saying it the American way,
yeah,
because it's literally the football with the ends that schools would relate to. Um, I met Cristian Guzman is our head coach, and we clicked. We clicked. It wasn't like a job interview or anything. It was more like we just brainstorming ideas, soccer knowledge, and I'm picky. I'm picky. I'll be honest with you. I like to have conversations with people that I know that they understand the game.
yeah.
And I'm not to sound cocky, but a lot of people pretend to understand the game, but they really don't understand the game.
I agree.
And But he understood the game, and I respected that, and he respected me back. And long story short, I mean, this year was not as special as one wanted it in terms of going all the way and win everything. But
Mhm.
we did so many records, and we created, more than anything else, we created a family environment, and that's
True.
rare. That's rare.
Yeah. So tell me about, before we go specifically to talk about your school, I grew up in Texas. I'm from Argentina. I came to the US as a kid. I
Mhm.
actually played at Katie Taylor High School. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm pretty, you're
Yeah,
close.
yeah. No,
You're
I know
you're a
exactly.
coach at Brookshire, right? Brookshire High
Mhm.
School. Yeah.
Yeah, Brookshire
So right
revolves.
outside of, Houston, a little bit west than Katy.
Mhm.
I know where it is. It's very close to home. But so when I played there, I played high school soccer there. I was in varsity 3 years. We
They're
or
actually looking
last
for a
year,
head coach right now.
for real, they are looking for a head coach.
I'm dead serious. Yes,
Oh,
yes. It
really?
is a job that a lot of people are scared to take.
Yeah, I bet. I'm actually, well, I don't know yet, but I'm actually might have who was, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know what happened, but who was the head coach there? But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
But interesting enough. But yeah, so I went there. It was a fun experience. But obviously, being, I guess, a Hispanic person, we
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of Hispanic person. A lot of white guys were on the team, and yeah, like you were saying, the mentality of, like, soccer with soccer and football were kind of different, and just the way that people played, obviously it was different. But I never understood this whole, maybe you as a coach, as a teacher, could be able to explain the whole 6A, 5A, 4A, and in what makes, like, for example, your school compete with 4A schools than 6A schools, if that makes sense. I don't, just so
No,
to clarify for the people that don't know about high school soccer, I have an idea of what that is, but just to explain to everybody what that is, the difference between like a 4A, 5A, and 6A school.
student population. that really comes up to, it's not like first division, second division in terms of quality. It's just student population and the body that you got. For example, I mean, this season we went against Morton Ranch, which is a 6A, and we beat them up, and we are a 4A. So it technically, in terms of tiers, we have basically 2,000 students less than Morton Ranch. So obviously, as a student body, especially in a public school, you have to play with the people that you got, that is a student body. So let's say if I got 2,000 more students,
your pool is a
it
lot
most
bigger.
likely allows me to have much better options, which also leads to the next problem, which is if you got a less student body population, like for example at Brookshire Royal, we have less than 800 students. So it's a small school.
It's tiny.
Exactly. And that's and of course not everyone is a boy, not everyone is a girl. So let's say that 50-50, then you got 400. And not every 400, trust me, first of all cares about soccer, second of all should ever play soccer,
right?
So and then but that leads to the next problem, which is these 6A schools, because they got so many students. It can be 2,000, 3,000. Some of them got almost 5,000 students.
That's crazy.
They can actually have a varsity team, a JV team, and a freshman team, which allows to develop these players.
True.
We, for example, we had a JV team, but in our district, we were the only one that had a JV team. And we have to play during their season, or regular season, one would call it, we have to play in our district. So what happened is we, during the district play, that's what they call it, the preseason, the regular season district play, we have to travel to these teams, and we can only bring our varsity. And then later in the season, what ends up happening is that the JV ceases to exist, because there's no way we can pile up two different buses with different coaches, with different people at the same time, go to different places. And that's really the difference, and hurts the game between a 6A and oftentimes a 5A compared to the 4A. In 4A, you don't really got JV, and even if you got JV, it doesn't last more than the preseason. In the preseason, you can set up scrimmages games against the 6A schools. Oftentimes also that leads to the next problem. A lot of 6A schools don't want to play 4A schools, because if they lose, it looks really bad on their resume. And a lot of coaches, they come up with this excuse, our schedule is full. It's not. They just don't want to play us. And it's, that's what people get it wrong. Just because it's a 4A, it doesn't mean that it's a less quality team compared to a 6A. Obviously, especially if you are in the Katy area, the 6A schools are powerhouses. You got Seven Lakes, which is nationally ranked over and over and over and over. They are nationally ranked, and they didn't even won a state. So the competition in Katy is fierce, very, very fierce. 4A, it's good, but I'll tell you something. In 4A, you start seeing much better, more a little bit up north in the state, because there's a lot more support of clubs that support these smaller high schools. For example, a kid in my school, if he wants to play club, he has to drive about 15 miles to Katy if he wants to do club soccer, because there's nothing around the Brookshire area. And the thing about it, that too, is that leads to the next problem. A lot of these Katy schools, the parents are more financially stable, which allows them to just pay the fees and drive the kids to go to club soccer. The problem with us is we don't have that. Sometimes, for example, even if we wanted to have some summer practice, whatever, which technically not really supposed to have it, but let's say that we wanted to do something around the summer or during the off season where the kids are not in school. A lot of them even struggle to go 2 miles down the road because they have no transportation. So that's another thing too that you are dealing oftentimes when you're looking at smaller schools. Oftentimes smaller schools also means a bigger minority, and bigger minority oftentimes relates to smaller incomes as well, which impedes a lot of the development. Even if the kids are good, let's say the season goes from Thanksgiving all the way till March, April, depends how far you go. After that, what happens? school is over.
Yeah.
So
There's
that's why
nothing
you need
else.
the club support system to continue to be in shape and be better. Because if you don't have that, then maybe when the school restarts, you can do cross country and stay in shape and get fast. But if not, that's it.
That's it. You ain't got nothing.
So that's the biggest difference between 4, 5, and 6A. It's just student body population. It doesn't necessarily mean quality. Bernie, for example, won a state in 4A right now, back-to-back years, which is very tough to win back-to-back years. And I think they'll definitely make a deep run in the playoffs if they were a 6A school. Their number 14 is very talented, one of the best players I've seen in high school. And it's a shame, because if you don't watch the game, you literally think you're looking at third division, right? Because it makes sense, 4, 5, 6, right? So
Yeah.
6 first division, second division, 5. It's not at all. It's just a student body population. And also keep in mind this, just because a team, and every 2 years they check back at the numbers, and then sometimes you can go. It happens, not rarely, more than not. But sometimes you might have a 6A being reclassified as a 5A if the student population diminished.
Yeah.
But oftentimes what you start seeing, even with Pato now in a lot of these new schools in Katy, they like Katy Jordan. Katy Jordan was a 5A. This past season, they are now going to be a 6A school, because for the first time they have seniors, and because the student body population went, which wasn't really too fair. Because they already had enough people, and everyone, that's the thing. You got a brand new school. If you got money, everyone wants to be there. And they had so many good club soccer players transferring from one school to the other. And obviously transferring is illegal, but if you got an address from a family member that lives nearby, then you're going to do it. So that's why they went to state as a 5A school, which, we actually played them during as a scrimmage, and we lost 3-1, but we lost 3-1 to a team that actually made it all the way to state as a 5A that basically is a 6A school. So we actually dominated the game. We just made 3 mistakes that they were able to finish on us, and we played down there. So again, if you were there and you saw the game, you'll be like, wow, I don't even know if there's a difference between 5A or 4A or anything like that. So it just depends. It's important for people that are not familiar with the high school system to understand that, yes, technically, because you got more people, you might have bigger quality, or at least you got more bodies to pick, but it's not necessarily a must.
All right, so I got 2 questions. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say them right now, just so I don't forget them. But because I imagine you guys have do a lot of traveling. Obviously being in Brookshire, like it being like a small town, you usually probably have to go against other small towns. Therefore, your traveling schedule might be a little bit harsher than maybe if you're in Katy, like I was. You go Cinco Ranch, Seven Lakes, fairly around the area, right? So one question is about traveling. And then after you answer that one, I wanted to ask you, what's the process of you guys, picking the guys for the team? Because obviously the population of the school is a lot, smaller. So, how many guys do you have, going out for tryouts? How many guys do you get to, to pick for the team? And, how hard is the whole process? Obviously, since you don't have the numbers to, pick and choose, or to be picky, but it's like maybe you can't be picky. You just gotta have to get a guy that maybe is not at the level of the other guys, but maybe bring him in and have him grow as a maybe freshman, sophomore, whatever. So by the time he's a senior, he could be ready to play with the with the big boys. So go ahead.
So in terms of traveling, sometimes we drive about 50 miles or so to go to some away games. I'll be honest with you. The biggest thing with trouble it's finding transportation itself within our district. There's such a bus driver shortage. It's kind of all around. But that's one of the problems that we have more than anything else. Of course, when we make it to the playoffs, oftentimes you play against teams like, for example, we played Mejia, which is in San Antonio, and we have to pick a neutral site, and we drove all the way to College Station, basically
Ooh,
to have the
yeah.
game, which for us, I mean, for us is an hour now
Yeah,
to
it's
1 hour
farther
and
for
10
them.
minutes. For them is like an hour and 40 minutes drive. So it can get tedious, especially in the playoffs when you're playing teams that are just all around. I mean, you can go too humble to you can, you can be all over the place, and this sucks because these kids sometimes are not accustomed to it, and then being on the bus for like 2 hours and you arrive like an hour before the game and they're like falling asleep.
Yeah,
It hurts the game. It hurts the game.
yeah, of
And
course.
you do have to warm up and get ready to play. As a little kid that you're not accustomed to it, especially because you don't do club soccer, that hurts. That hurts.
Yeah.
That's something that it hurt us, for example, during the playoffs. In terms of what was the second question again? Sorry.
Like since obviously the pool of
Oh
students
yeah.
is a lot smaller, how's the process of picking a team to compete?
So the one thing I'll tell you about Royal is that I would say my head coach might be on me about it, but it's the most popular sport. We are primarily minority Hispanic as well, so everyone does love soccer. Is the major sport.
Mhm.
That is the sport that we are very good at year after year. We are still developing the other programs, but soccer is the one that is the clear cut favorite, successful
It's good.
program that we got going on. So I would say these, you might not like it, but I would say that we have a lot more people to try out that should try out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
it's about 60 to 80 people. I think this year coming up, we might have, it might even be more. Which is not necessarily bad. Trying out is not bad at all,
Yeah, yeah.
We don't like to cut people. um I'll say it. I believe in cutting people, but
Yeah.
that's not really the way the district want us to do it. So, in which I get it, sports in high school are a way to get yourself busy and pulls you away from maybe other things that you'll be doing otherwise that are negative for you. So
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. It helps us to have the JV team because we definitely need a JV team to pile up all the 25 that don't make it to varsity. Of course, you want to have more than 25 because if you fail every 6 weeks your grades, you can actually not play the 6 weeks afterwards. So you do got to have more than 25 options. That's injuries to you and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So you want to develop, especially on the JV, but that creates the same problem again. Like I told you, this past season, for example, we had about 4 games on the JV, and that was it because no one
Yeah.
else in our district had JV teams. So the only way that we could try to tell them was that, hey, look, come to practice. You never know. And actually, I kid you not, about the 6, 7, 8 people that continued to stay in practice, they all ended up at some point in time starting at least a game on varsity, even if maybe they weren't necessarily ready for it. They started it because some of the games you got it off in, some of the games we knew that it would beat the other team regardless. So we wanted to give playing minutes, meaningful playing minutes to see how much more they can develop. Because one thing is practice, but you never develop as much as you develop during game action. That's something that it's priceless as a player. You can practice all you want, and yes, you'll get better, but it's the game action, that pressure. They're getting used to the pressure, getting used to the screams from the sidelines to your teammates, to the other teams, to the parents, to the fans. That's something that you need to get used to, and there's really no one that can teach you that unless you really play the game. So that helps us. I mean, we had a player that really ended up this season being one of the starters, and he actually had never played soccer before he even did a tryout. So his game really went very high in terms of skills. Of course, here and there he felt self-conscious about himself, so the mentality aspect of it wasn't really there, and he still was not there. He's still not there. I just had a conversation with him 2 days ago about it because he wanted to quit for next season. He didn't want to play, and I had to convince him that, yeah, dude, bro, it's the first year you played and you already had a starting spot on a team that made it all the way to third round. So yes, I do understand that you're looking at the negative things you have done, that wrong pass, that being scared on the divided ball and all those things. But I mean, as a player, you're going to mess up multiple times sometimes throughout the game. I mean, you got, for example, Ronaldo. I mean, up till last month, he spent about 2 months that, let's be honest, he sucked for 2 months. And that's my favorite player. But up till last month, when he started scoring again for 2 months, it was rough. It was rough. And that's a legend. I mean, Messi, you're Argentinian. Messi this season, I don't know about that.
Yeah, 9-6. Yeah, it's just not there.
So that's why it's useful to have a lot of players. We don't necessarily we just went to see the 8th graders too, because they're about to come up. They look good. The 7th graders need development, but the 8th graders look good. They've been playing for a few years. They really never had a coach, so they raw on the edges, but they have chemistry already because they almost all best friends, and that's going to bring about 20 good options that are going to compete and make up for the seniors that are leaving the program. And you were going to lose some good seniors. Wilson was probably one of the best midfielders we ever had. AB Garcia too, one good striker midfielder that we're going to lose. We're going to have Aldo, which MVP of the district, all state honorable mention. Amazing player. He scored, I believe, 33 goals, 11 assists. He broke the record for all time for Royal, most goals scored in a season. He actually broke our head coach record, because our head coach used to play for Royal, and he broke his record for most goals scored. But because some of the games get out of hands, yes, we don't have JV, but these games they got out of hands allowed us to make a lot of substitutions in the second half, and we basically were putting the JV out there. This coming season, we're able to already convince a lot of the Katy schools. We're going to be in the Katy tournament again, so we're going to play a lot against 6A schools. So we already have about 6 to maybe 8 JV games scheduled, which is going to be really good, for the season coming up.
All right, so you were talking about 8th graders. You know how you went to go see them, kind of go check them out, and how you were able to secure, I guess, some games, with some Katy schools for the JV squad. So my question to you, how is that going to be? How many coaches is in the staff and with the team? Because obviously you're the assistant coach. You have what was the name of the coach?
Cristian
Guzman. He's the head coach, the assistant coach. Is there any more people in like the team, the coaching team, or are you going to be taking care of the JV team and the newcomers? How does that work?
Devin Lysing is also the other assistant. We both oversee the JV. Guzman doesn't really oversee the JV. It's more up to us to develop them. I mean, he's of course at the games, and he, we talk, we have a good feedback of it. But we use the same formation from the varsity team, so at least the players are accustomed to use the formation. So if they get called up to varsity, they already know what is more or less expected of them. We run a tight ship. Ideally, and I think as things are going to go a little bit more forward, we're also going to have one of the JV coaches starting to coach the 8th and 7th graders. It's beneficial because their season is right after the high school season ends, and it just runs for about a month. Oftentimes it's just either way a tournament or 4 games. That's how it works across the Texas school system, at least. So it gives them it's supposed to just give them a taste. I don't like that, because every game that you play and it starts 0-0, it's competitive. So you play to win the game. You don't play to just have fun, at least not as a grader in my book. Of course, you got to have fun, obviously, because if you don't have fun, you're going to quit. So at that age, you got to make it a balance, but you also got to take it serious. And that's something that I believe that one of the JV coaches should do, and also to make the bridge in terms of, hey, this is what you expect. This is what I see you good. Maybe over the summer you can work on specific things. especially it's not oftentimes we got freshmen that make it to our varsity. I mean, we had Roy Escobar was an example of a player that is a striker that made it as a freshman, but it's very rare to find freshmen that make it to our varsity just due to the quality of the game we got. But we want to start employing a lot more growth into the program. That's something that in the previous seasons have not been done with the previous coaching staff. And this is not me talking crap about nobody. It's just different philosophies and style of the game. But when we joined forces this year, it was all about changing the program to become an elite program within the state of Texas. And we're starting to do things differently. We started getting players with offers to go to college, which most of them never really cared about their grades, because again, they're minority and they never thought they could, get scholarships or college for much, if not free, much cheaper because of their soccer skills. And so that's something that now they're starting to realize. And let's be honest, the work ethic has to start in the classroom. And even as a club, so as a club soccer is a little bit different because your parents are paying for it. So there's a different pressure applied to it. But in high school, that let's have fun, it's still what you find it. And then you got that football coach that tells them, hey, figure it out, just scrimmage every practice. And but that culture is changing. And if you're not changing along it, you're losing every game by a lot. And so that their work ethic starts in the classroom. So if they got a work ethic in the classroom, that's going to be easier for me to also coach them after the classes, and that's something that we also changing slowly at Royal. It's that mindset. Also at Royal, that leads to one of the, I don't know if you were going to ask me or not, but obviously this week, we've been having some Twitter action, and I'm not gonna really necessarily like talk names or anything like that. But one of the things that we also, want to make, and it's been a battling for me all year long. It's the mental aspect of the game, especially with kids. They're not mentally tough. They like to look tough, sound tough, but they're not. And in a lot of times we talk about rivalries, and sometimes I go online and I see adults saying that, oh, what a great rivalry this is and that is and all that. And that's great. But then the rivalry gets transplanted into the parents. The parents are at home telling the kids, hey, make sure you don't lose this game. Make sure that you play extra hard on this game. And it's applying this pressure of like, we don't like the other team and all that. And then they go to the game gets a little physical. And then you start seeing stuff getting out of hand. So, this is my advice, people, especially when they still talking about young adults, this is not the Premier League. These Premier League players are accustomed to it. And even then, sometimes there's some action out there on the field. So, that's one advice, because a lot of coaches, one of the things they don't like to do is, like, for example, a lot of coaches pick the other side of the field to coach because they don't have to deal with the parents. That's sometimes one of the sleek things I see it. Because a lot of every parent is a coach.
Exactly.
And so it's confusing because the player is trying to play, and then he's hearing something from the parents on the stands, then he's hearing something from the coach. Then he doesn't want to let down none of them. At the end of the day, he doesn't want to let down the teammates, but the teammates are also telling them something else. So it gets confusing. And that's something that I, recommend as everyone to just be on the same path. It's fun to watch a game when there's some spice into it. But they kids. They're still kids, and exactly. I see it. They spend on the week listening to these or even going online, and then there's fights. There's literally fights. The game gets physical, and then there's fights, and then go back online, and then I'm reading about fights that happen, and adults are blaming this and blaming that. The truth is, the fault is the adults that are enticing these rivalries. There are no rivalries. It's a game. you win it, you shake hands, you lose it, you shake hands, you know, you learn. You only get better also if sometimes you lose. You have to sometimes feel the pain of losing to understand that maybe you need to work harder. And so there's learning curves. I mean, this season we definitely lost in the third round. We thought we were going to make it to state. We did not. So it's a lesson learned that we have to work harder, you know.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was a bad thing we lost, but in the long run of the program, maybe it was the right thing that happened for us, you know,
Yeah.
to change mentalities and things like that. So, but that's one important thing about that I wanted to make it clear. I don't know if you were going to talk or not about it, but it's just be aware that they are still kids. Yes, you got to care and everything like that, but just people should be a little bit more conscious about what they say and how they say it to
So
kids.
let me ask you like a deeper question towards that subject. How do you guys, you and your coaching staff deal with, because obviously you can only control your team, your players, and maybe the parents of your players.
Mhm.
But how do you guys, do you guys talk, with the parents? Do you guys tell them, hey, hey guys, let us do our job type deal? We understand you're the parent. Do you guys have conversations with the parents at all? What's that relationship like, in your school specifically? Because obviously you can't talk for anybody else, but how do you guys deal, because that's added pressure, having parents. I mean, I remember my dad yelling from the stands like, hey, do this, and you're like, wait, what do I do? Do I listen to my coach? Do I listen to my dad? And like you said, and when you're a kid, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you don't want to let your parents down, but then also you don't want to let your coach down, your teammates.
Mhm.
So how do you guys deal with, specifically with that? You just kind of talked about it, like surface level, but
Mhm.
in your case, in your team, how do you deal with that?
You can really never control what they say on the stands. You know, we can have conversations. I don't know if that's beneficial or things like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes after some games, we had some parents coming to us telling us what we're doing wrong. And you kind of got to do that customer service job, which is, oh, listen, make them feel important and everything. And I'm not saying they're not
Yeah.
important, because obviously they are. But it's just, you as a coach, you have to stick to your philosophy and mentality of the game. So you have to, yes, listen to them, but take it only what it's beneficial. On the stands, you can't control it. You can't
Yeah.
control it. You tell the players over and over to listen to you, because we are the ones that spend all the time on practices out there with them, 101, trying to make them better. So it's trusting the process. And that's the thing. When the players are aware and they understand, because they spend a lot of times watching soccer, so they get a pretty good idea if they have a coach that understands soccer or not.
Yeah.
So if they have a coach that they look up to because he understands soccer, then they're gonna buy into the coach oftentimes than what the people in the stands are saying, even if it's their parents. And
Yeah,
that's
of
something that
course.
I have seen over and over. But if it's a coach that he doesn't really know what he's doing, and then know that the coach doesn't know what he's doing, then he's listening to the father on the stands.
Yeah.
And I see you might be in Spanish, you might be on a different language that they believe that the coaches might not be able to understand it. Also, when I'm on the game, I don't listen to that. I'm not focused on that. I'm there to coach my players. I'm not there to talk or make friends. That's a statement we always say. We are there not to make friends. We are there to make our players better. We are there to make these young adults men, a good man,
Yeah.
and through the passion of soccer, giving them also some wins, because if they work hard, they deserve to win on the field.
Like,
And oftentimes, one of the things we struggled this year was that I talk a lot to the referees. Everyone on the bench talks a lot to the referees. Unfortunately, in high school, we don't have the best quality of referees in the game. I'm a referee, so I can attest for that. I wish it was different. I feel like maybe in a few years will be. It's tough because as a referee, you get cursed all the time. It's not
yeah.
fun. You have to not listen to it, and it's kind of like what I do on the sidelines. We don't listen to it. we just focus on the game. In off time, we get together in a circle, and everyone has to pay attention. That's another thing too. Like, if someone is out there at off time trying to talk to their parents rather than being on the circle and listening to us as a coaching staff, um, that's going to hurt your playing time next week. You have to understand there's consequences into it.
Yeah.
So buying into a coach that knows what he's talking about, consequences that are well advised as well, those are things that allows you to manage. Now, the parents will always talk. You're going to have to make them feel good. You're going to have to listen. Of course, if it gets out of hand, you're going to say, hey, sir, if you starting to disrespect me, I think this is the end of the conversation. There's only so many limits as well. But you have to, parents are important. Without the parents, oftentimes the kids they have to stay after school. So the bus doesn't work when the practice lasts 2 hours and they have to come out of their way and pick them up. So they have to feel important because they are important. Without them, really and truly, this doesn't exist as a program. So yes, we have to listen to them. And I mean, sometimes they have, some interesting things, I'm not oblivious to stuff. If there's something that maybe I'd never thought about it, I'll take it and I'll use it. It's the smartest thing. Put the ego aside. You should put the ego aside. If there's someone that tells you something smart, I don't care who that is. They might even be the opponent coach. If it's telling you something that I go home and I repeat it and I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of smart, and I might use it, then I'm using it. You cannot have a big ego at least not as a high school coach. You have to be smart about your decisions. Make them feel important because they are, but you don't need to swallow everything they tell you. So that's my advice, at least.
No, hey, that's good. That's good. And let me ask you about this side. We talked about the young guys coming in. Seven, 8th graders eventually coming into high school. But tell me about the other side of that. High school career. The seniors that leave the high school. How you touched a little bit about how you guys are trying to change the culture. Have the kids kind of think about their future, maybe going to college. Maybe get scholarships, go play college soccer, or even if they don't, to better themselves. How do you guys, man? Because being a high school coach, it's tough, man. There's so many different things, but in that specific aspect, how do you guys deal with that?
The most painful thing you have every season is the last game of the season. That for a lot of high school players, that was the last competitive game you ever did in your life. Yeah. You see people crying. I mean, for a run of the playoffs, I had players with 8 minutes left in the game crying, and I'm like, bro, it's not over. 8 minutes is a lot of minutes. We just saw it today, in the Champions League. So, but it's tough. It's tough because, again, you got young adults, and kids and feelings and all these bottle up teenager action going on. So it's tough. It's, you're not supposed to cry as a coach, but you care, especially if you were a coach that were in the program for a few years. You were with them for those 3-4 years on that ride. So it's a bittersweet moment. I won't even say sweet. It's a bitter moment to see that they're not going to be back, at least not as players. I mean, they will be fans, they will be alumni, they will be whatever it is, but it's not. So it hurts. And that's, I remember against Mejia about a month and a half ago, it took us about an hour after the game to be able to get on the bus. The players were devastated, to say the least, man. And they thinking negatively. Some players are like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do in life now,
Wow.
And it's tough because, like I said, they spent a lot of years, and this was their scapegoat. This was their fun stuff. This was if my day goes better, at least I know that I got this going on. And it's tough. What to me was tougher this year is to know that maybe had we arrived earlier in their career, they could have achieved more. They could have been better technically. They could have had more opportunities. They could have done better maybe in the classroom. They could have had more opportunities in terms of scholarships and things of that nature. And so that's, I think, what to me, specifically to me, it hurt me. I'll be honest with you, man. It took me about 3 weeks, and I'm an adult. It took me 3 weeks and it's been a month and a half, and I don't think I'm fully recovered
Yeah.
from it. But I mean, we thought about even making a banner about Mejia and put it out there as we lift up weights right now. And as a reminder, a painful reminder at least, that if we want to be better, at least to the juniors and sophomores
Yeah.
and freshmen, you got another shot.
Yeah.
The seniors don't
Yeah.
anymore, and so it's, as much as it is bittersweet, it serves as motivation, because now we got these kids that never felt that pain before, and now it's going to lead them to next season taking these a little bit more serious, because nobody likes to be in pain. For the
Exactly.
seniors, I mean, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do, like, in terms of if they don't get a scholarship. That's basically it. But that's another side to it. Maybe we can try to entice them. Hey, do you like maybe being a coach? Because maybe if you can go to college, you can get your certification, you can get your bachelor's, and then you can come over here, every year you can, you be an assistant for a little bit, or a volunteer assistant, or whatever, help out in practice and stuff like that. And one day you can give back to the community, and still be involved with soccer, which is a lot of these kids' passions. I mean, I got Sebastian, which is a sophomore. And I mean, that's a coach right there. He's already a coach and he's a sophomore. One of the most key players. I always tell him, man, you're going to be big in 2 years, man. And next year and last year, next year. But he knows the game. He knows the game. And I asked him, do you want to be a coach? And I said, yeah, I want to be a coach. I was like, okay. Well, then continue to use this as a fuel to make your college much, much cheaper. So
Exactly.
for the seniors, it's bittersweet. It's kind of like you spend 2 months before the school ends and they get their high school diploma, trying to give them hope and trying to give them light for what's next in their life. So that's, again, that psychological component. It's very important, even though a lot of coaches neglect, because I see a lot of coaches, once that's it, the season, and the seniors, they neglect the seniors, because it's kind of like, oh, I
They're
don't need these
gone.
guys
Yeah.
anymore, so screw them. And that's selfish. Once again, selfish and very wrong. They were part of the program. They're still part of the program. They're forever part of the program. I mean, all
Yeah.
the trophies that we got, yes, their names in there as well. So the program we only have 80 kids coming because of all the previous seasons, how these guys grinded to become successful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reminder that, and for anyone listening, maybe to give a perspective, but it's you should never trash them. They're not damaged goods. They're not anything like that. They are still being an important value. And I like to have these seniors maybe come back next year and talk to these young players as well, and try to give them those painful stories, but also the good stories, all the fun that they had while playing soccer, to give them importance that they shouldn't be taking it for granted. Soccer, because a lot of players do take high school for granted, and then they regret it and they wish they could be turned back the clock. There's no such thing in life as turning back the clock.
Unfortunately, yeah. So yeah. So tell me, what's the future of this program looking like? What do you are you, I'm sure you guys are already probably working for next year. What can you maybe share, without giving all your secrets? Can you just kind of give us an idea of what you guys are working towards, towards the future as a team, and then maybe, personally, what are your dreams or aspirations as a coach, or whatever it may be,
Yeah. Without trying to give too much, right now we're working in not so much conditioning, because conditioning wasn't a problem. Eventually going to have to work on speed. Power speed was a problem. 101, especially when we went against 6A schools, was a problem. But more than anything else, our physicality, not because we're not physical, we don't have a bigger body like these football players have. And
yeah.
sometimes you see these teams, they look like 6-foot grown men out there. And
Yeah.
we are short. We are a team that is 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". So if you're short, you should have speed. You got to beat them up in speed. But if you get contact, these referees, once again, especially if it's in the box, they have a second guess before they call the whistle. So winning that physicality, that 101 challenge, is something that we never, before we got this year, we never lift weights. We never were out there lifting weights, and that's a terrible mistake. As a soccer player, you do have to have strength. Some people think it's all about speed, and a soccer player, prototype of a soccer player is some skinny guy out there that runs fast like a gazelle. That's not necessarily true. Yes, you do need some of those guys on the team, absolutely. But you need to have some physicality, and so speed, physicality, conditioning was not necessarily a problem. Like, we were able to keep up better than most teams on our district. So of course we're not going to neglect that. But honestly, I'm gonna sound cocky. I'm gonna if some another person is saying
do it.
we won district undefeated this season, which was the first time ever. Sealy was the team that finished second. There's some team out there, Nevasota. They looking for a coach right now, so that depends on that or who they got as a coach. Sealy is still the team to beat. They're not rivals. They're just a team out there. I want to make this clear. Not rivals. We got no rivals. But my head coach is not going to agree with that again. But winning district undefeated. We have two less teams. We're losing Rice and Columbus. So we're going from an 8-team district to a 6-team district. That sucks and hurts because technically we lose 4 games. And that hurts because I like having 2 games a week. It helps, especially when we get in the playoffs and sometimes you play back-to-back days in later stages of it and travel and all that. And it's quite impossible to set up scrimmages when other districts are going on. So that's a struggle. Making it to state, that's honestly, I don't like to jinx it, but winning state is the ideal scenario over here. But I don't see a reason why we won't make top 4 and make it to state. Even this year, that's what it was supposed to. We were ranked up there very high too, and all that. And by the way, it was funny because we were talking a little bit ago about terms of population. East Chambers, to give you an idea, and I gotta take my head off to East Chambers. East Chambers great this past season. I don't think they went as far as maybe they should have, but they have less than 400 students. Wow. Less than 400 students. I mean, that's, to me, it's amazing what they're doing out there with less than 400 students. They went deep on the playoffs. They were supposed to play as deeper in the playoffs, but that didn't happen. Stafford got in the way. But so yeah, state for sure. State for sure. It's if we don't get cocky and we bust butts like we're supposed to, I don't. And that leads to the next thing, the next part you asked me, what is my envision for myself and things like that. So I'm having a hard time leaving the program because I know it's at it. State is at it, and more. And who doesn't like to win, right? But honestly, I'm looking for a challenge where I know that I can be eventually a head coach on a 6A. In 6A, the game tends to be much closer. The teams are much more equal. And the game is faster. You do have bigger bodies out there. And you do have a lot more options. And there's these players actually have club soccer. So they stay in shape all year long. And so that's, being part of running your program by yourself. It's something that I think it's priceless. That's your final touch. That's your Picasso touch, or maybe not your Picasso, your crap painting, but hopefully your Picasso. And that's something that I'm envisioning. I'm actually in the process. I already had a few interviews, of course. Okay. I don't want to say much yet. But there are certain possibilities for me to leave. I'm having a hard time leaving. Because it's a family. And you don't see that often. You don't see oftentimes a head coach that listen to the assistants, that if you were out there in practice or games, maybe you might be confused to know who's the head coach, because everyone talks and everyone has a good say. So not just talking because talking is not good, but having something important to say on the sidelines is key.
Yeah.
And we all trust one another, that nobody is trying to overstep nobody and things of the nature. But Guzman is a Royal boy. He graduated from Royal. He's a Royal all through and through. He oftentimes jokes whenever he gets 500 wins, he retires, and they'll be it, and he'll stay a Royal, and that's his thing. And by any means, the program is in great hands regardless, and that's something that makes me comfortable knowing. But I envision myself eventually, and I might even branch out into the girls. There might be an opportunity actually for a 6A with the girls as head coach. Shall see. But I got some stuff brewing. I'm like Royal, and like most people that should be in this field, I like challenges. I like winning, and I like not just winning. I like dominating, and I like the thrill of knowing that maybe either way I have a program by myself, or I have a similar program, maybe in a 5A or a 6A school, that I have the same type of family environment. Even if I go somewhere else as an assistant, but at least I know that I'm still respected, that I still have something good to say and things of the nature. Because a lot of times these days, you got a coach that if he's varsity, he wants to be left alone. And then you're just the assistant, but really and truly, you're just a JV guy. And that's great because you need to develop players, but you really got nothing to do with varsity. And that, I think, that's perspectives, that's philosophy. So I don't want to say much about it. I don't think it benefits anybody, because if my game is finished and I'm on the sidelines, I should still be able to tell you, maybe, hey, I see something. Hey, you don't have to do it, but I see these, that maybe these might help you. But a lot of coaches don't necessarily like that, because they honestly, they feel threatened that the assistant might take their jobs eventually. And yes, it is high school, but like I said, people do get, I don't want to say fired, but their contracts don't get renewed. Different phrasing, same situation.
For sure.
But yeah, it's about trust. It's about challenge. I love new challenges. Also, if I am to work with someone else, different perspective as well, different perspective and growth. And I also drive 40 miles each way. So because I'm out here in Willowbrook Mall, and it's Brookshire, it's a drive. But yeah, it's whatever happens, and if you don't know much about soccer, and if you're around the area, definitely check out Brookshire Royal. They one of the best teams around, at least for 4A and 5A as well. I'm not going to say the name of the team. You go online, you might be able to find, but there was a 5A school. We beat them 15-0 on a scrimmage this past season. So,
so, just a little shade.
But just because it's 4A and 5A, it doesn't mean that we are any less or the game is going to be bad. And definitely, if you want to have fun, go check out the silly Royal game every year. There's always some funny stuff going on in those games.
Cool. So just to kind of finish off, we'll take a couple of minutes. Just first of all, tell me when the season starts for you guys, and then just just a few minutes. Let me know what you personally, what kind of coaching style do you like? That you maybe see on TV, maybe Jurgen Klopp, Guardiola, or whatever it may be. What do you try to mimic you personally? And then we can close it off with that.
Right. So practice by UIL, because you have to follow UIL guidelines. Practice starts the week after Thanksgiving. That's when it starts. You start seeing the first scrimmages, oftentimes at the very early of December, mid-December, tournaments, a lot of tournaments going on. Every team is still finalizing those, so I can't tell you necessarily like when, but somewhere around December. District play for any team starts in January, about first, second week of January, oftentimes, again, depends. And there runs all the way till March, and then in April, March, you have the playoffs, and then, you got, the state tournament. But in terms of my coaching style, I don't, a little bit of everybody. I think you'll be a fool to just pick one dude. And honestly, I'll tell you something. The most successful teams these days and nowadays are a lot of times coaches that bring a new philosophy to the game. And you see it. I mean, yeah, Guardiola has been out for a while and all that. But what is a while? 5-6 years ago? And what was his style? Was it a style that you have seen before, or was it a unique style, a combination of many different styles? And I'll be honest with you, the more, I grew up in a perspective that is just soccer. Then I came over here and I started watching a little bit of football, American football and things like that. And the one thing that fascinated me about American football was this playbook, the scripted plays and all that, and these trick plays and all this stuff that they use down there in American football. And I thought to myself, trick plays technically are these free kick plays that oftentimes you see it,
Yeah.
and why don't you use more of that on corners and free kicks and things like that to try to trick the team into, let's say they have never seen, let's say it's a goofy play.
Yeah.
As a defender, let's say I stack everybody down there. As a player, I'm starting to look around like, what's going on here? I'm completely lost. And I say a lot in high school, for example, I see that a lot. Most teams don't have no plays that they really practice, honestly. A lot of teams don't, which is a mistake, okay? But I see it every time. A lot of times what they do is they stack up the box on the corner and they kick it out there in the middle and confusion,
whatever happens,
boom, whatever happens, and that's kind of it. Sometimes a trick play brings confusion oftentimes to the defense, which allows then the offense, because we have practiced it, to be aware of where most likely the ball is going to be at it, and then kick it. I'm actually working on my own plays, about 70 to 80 different plays that I'm either way I practiced when I was younger, or I come up with that I think that maybe someone never really thought about it that can work. Of course, that only works if you start running in practice and you see that your players buy into it. But I mean, even for example, you started seeing like a few years back when it was the free kicks, they do the laying down, because the ball, if you do the free kick, the ball might go down on the floor.
Yeah.
I still see it and I'm like, that's the dumbest thing ever. But is it? It's not, because if you actually kick, if everyone jumps, and the ball goes underneath, there's a dude right there.
That's a goal, yeah.
So it makes you think twice as a free kick taker. Maybe I need to have the ball going around instead underneath, because there's a dude underneath. Like, for example, one of the goals we scored in the last round of the playoffs, that's how the ball went. The ball went underneath, and we didn't have nobody to look like a fool. But had we had a guy looking like a fool, we would have not suffered that goal. So it's the little things that make a difference oftentimes. I mean, you got a lot of games that are 0-0, and there was that one single mistake, that one thing that really unlocked the game. I was just talking to another head coach, and for example, his philosophy was not to hold the ball a lot, because they know that in the district, they are technically not superior than most teams due to how their players are, they shorter and things like that. So the way he does it, if he has the ball, he has to be the ball with a purpose. It's not necessarily like the counter attack. Yes, it's a little bit of the counter attack because they're shorter and they got more speed, but it's more like we know that we're not going to have the ball, but when we have the ball, we have to play more like a fast chess game. And I liked when I heard that, I liked that, because you do got to see what the players you got in high school. Every year you got different bodies, they look different, different skills, and sometimes you do have to throw your conventional tactic to the trash can, because if the players you got don't really fit that, then you need to mold a little bit differently. And that's more my philosophy, and I believe most people, that's a struggle we had, and now that's something that at Brookshire we're going to change. But I believe that as a defender, you should have some technique with your feet. You should be comfortable with the ball, because if you don't, the strikers are going to know it, and they're going to attack your side. And if they keep attacking your side, no matter how good of a defender you are, you eventually will make a mistake, because you're going to be tired, mentally tired, physically tired. And one mistake again in a close game, that's all it takes. And then especially in high school, if you go down 1-0, and you're not accustomed to it, that's going to be tough to overcome, but that's my philosophy. It's literally a mixed, it's like I don't want to say it, but I say these often, but people don't get it. It's kind of like a chicken noodle soup. Yeah.
All right, guys. So as you saw, obviously the video ended right there. But basically, his last thought was how philosophy, like his soccer philosophy, was kind of like chicken noodle soup, basically a mixture of everything, a little mix of different philosophies. But literally that was the end of the conversation. So once again, we want to thank Bruno for coming on and jumping on and sharing his story, sharing his perspectives, his views on the game and everything that he's doing for the high school game here in Houston. But other than that, thank you guys for watching or listening. If you're listening, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all those things. But once again, thank you. Y'all have a good one, and I hope y'all enjoy the rest of the day. See you guys.